the blood of Jesus.
Welcome to A Biblical Worldview. I'm your girl, Tanya Michelle, and thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Don't forget that you can follow me on my socials. They're listed in the description box underneath the video. And if you'd like to support my efforts here at A Biblical Worldview, there are some links there also, and any contribution will be greatly appreciated, and we'll go back into my being able to continue to bring you content from a biblical perspective. So let's get into it. Well, if you've been following me on my Rumble channel, you know that we've been walking through the book of Genesis, and it has been just a glorious walk, and we are already past chapter 40. We are in chapter 41 right now. We're going to start in chapter 41 today. We're going to read the first 13 verses, and you know that we've been so blessed as we've discussed this beginning book of the Bible. We've learned so much, and we've seen Jesus all throughout Genesis. I don't know how anybody can read the book of Genesis and not see Jesus so many times, especially through the life of Joseph. And that's where we are right now. So we're reading Genesis chapter 41 verses 1 through 13, and I read from the Legacy Standard Bible when I'm doing Bible studies and Sunday school and different things like that. King James Version is my favorite, but I always read from the Legacy Standard Bible because that's just kind of easy reading, and it's really just simple to understand. And I love how the Legacy Standard Bible uses God's real name, which is Yahweh. That's just one of my own personal preferences. You don't have to like that, but that's where I land. So, in Genesis chapter 41, verses 1 through 13, the Word of God through the Legacy Standard Bible reads like this. Now, it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream. And behold, he was standing by the Nile. And behold, from the Nile there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed in the reeds. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile, ugly and thin, and they stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly and thin cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. He again fell asleep and dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, plump and good. And behold, 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Now it happened, and in the morning his spirit was troubled. So he sent and called for the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh recounted to them his dream, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would bring to remembrance today my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker. And we had a dream on the same night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. And there was with us a Hebrew youth, a slave of the captain of the bodyguard, and we recounted them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each one he interpreted according to his own dream. And just as he had interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me in my office, but he hanged him. So, that is verses 1 through 13. So we're just going to discuss this a little bit. And if you've been following with us, you know that Joseph is now in prison for doing something to Mrs. Potiphar that he didn't do. And while he was there, he encountered the cupbearer and the chief baker of Pharaoh, who were also in prison for some unknown offenses. Well, both of them had dreams on a particular night, and they were so disturbed that Joseph noticed their countenance was really down. He was like, what in the world wrong with you all? And so they explained to him that they had had these dreams, but they didn't understand what the dreams meant. Joseph explained to them that the interpretation of dreams belongs to God. And of course, he served God and they didn't. But he was able to tell them exactly what their dreams meant. And in their dreams, there were 3 days. And he explained to the chief cupbearer that in 3 days he'd be restored to his previous position. And the chief baker, he explained to him that in 3 days he would be beheaded. And so, sure enough, the things that Joseph interpreted happened to the chief baker and to the cupbearer. And when the cupbearer was being released, Joseph said to him, "Don't forget about me. I've been arrested and thrown into prison for something I did not do. I have no business even being here. So would you remember me when you get back to Pharaoh? Would you see if you can somehow or another get me a release?" Well, the cupbearer went back to his job and he didn't think another thought about Joseph. And I've always wondered, how in the world could this young man have interpreted that dream for you, as important as it was for you, and then you just go back to living life and forget all about him? Well, we know that the providence of God was at play. God is sovereign over everything, and God did not forget that Joseph was in that prison, but God had a timing. And a lot of times when God's timing is at play, we don't like to wait on that, because God's timing is not like ours. Joseph wanted to get out of jail the same day that cupbearer walked out of there, but that wasn't God's plan for him. So we know that it was 2 whole years after the cupbearer left and went back to work, and the chief baker was beheaded and killed for whatever it was he did. At that time, Pharaoh turns around and has a dream very similar to the dreams that the cupbearer and the chief baker had. And in his dream, there were 7 nice looking fat cows grazing near the Nile River. And then 7 ugly skinny cows came up and ate the nice fat cows. Now, this dream disturbed Pharaoh so much that it woke him up. Have you ever had a dream that was so vivid that it woke you up? I've had those kinds of dreams a handful of times in my life, and I'm not one of these people who believes in all this hocus pocus and spooky stuff, but I do know that when God gives me a dream, one that is strong enough to wake me up, like Pharaoh's dream woke him up, I know he is revealing something to me. He is getting ready to show me something, and it does not fail. Every time I have one of those dreams, literally something related to the dream happens just like it appeared to happen in the dream. As a matter of fact, I had that happen to me probably about 3 weeks ago. So anyway, I believe that God, if he chooses to, he can speak to us through dreams. Anyway, so the 7 skinny cows ate up the 7 fat cows, and Pharaoh was disturbed. He woke up, and then he kind of maybe shook himself off, and then he went back to sleep, and lo and behold, he had another dream where there were 7 nice plump ears of grain were sitting on a stalk, and they were probably ready to be picked when 7 thin, scorched, burnt up ears just sprouted and swallowed up the 7 plump ears. Again, this dream disturbed Pharaoh so much that it woke him up. And like I said, I know dreams like this can be very disturbing. I've had these kind of dreams, and you know, I woke up from one dream that I had, and I put some cold water on my face, and I said, okay, I want to make sure I don't go back into that dream, because it was just that horrific. Took some deep breaths and kind of, got myself together, went back to bed, and do you know, I picked that dream up right where I left off. It was so disturbing. And the second time I woke up, this time I couldn't even get back to sleep. And then later on that same day, I found out the horrible thing that I was going to find out. And of course, I'm going to write a book about that. I'm going I'm going to publish a book one day and just talk about all of that. So anyway, and you have to make sure you follow me on my socials so you can keep up with that book. So there you go. Anyway, the next morning, Pharaoh, he is not able to shake that disturbance in his spirit. So he called for his magicians, his wise men, all these people who typically would have been able to give him some direction on what his dreams meant, because that was their job. But this time they came up empty. Nobody could tell him what his dreams meant. Well, we get to verse 9, and the cupbearer spoke up, and he said, Pharaoh, you remember that time when you were angry with me and you put me in prison, myself and the chief baker? He said there was a Hebrew boy in that prison, and he interpreted my and the chief baker's dreams, and he was spot on. He interpreted those dreams to the letter. Really? Cupbearer now suddenly wants to decide to remember Joseph. But like I said, we can't be too hard on him because God's providence is at play. God allowed this cupbearer to forget Joseph. So we can't be too mad at him, as much as I want to be mad at him for forgetting Joseph. But he only forgot him because God was the one who did not allow him to remember Joseph. Even though Joseph had asked the cupbearer, he said, remember me. Because he even recounted to the cupbearer, he said he was stolen from his family. He was enslaved in Egypt, and then he was imprisoned for something that he didn't do. This cupbearer could have been a great advocate for Joseph. He could have told Joseph's story to the Pharaoh. He could have, gotten Joseph out probably early because he knew Joseph's story, because Joseph had told him, and then he knew how good Joseph was at interpreting the dreams. He probably could have even suggested to Pharaoh, hey, why don't you put this kid on your team of dream interpreters or magicians or whatever. He could have vouched for Joseph in several different ways, but he didn't do it. He forgot Joseph. But guess who didn't forget Joseph? God didn't forget Joseph. God knew Joseph was there, and God had plans for Joseph. And so if you are in a holding pattern and you feel like God has forgotten you, he has not. Yeah, the person that you said, hey, hook a sister up or hook a brother up. Yeah, they may have forgotten you because they're human. They operate in the flesh. They're frail. They're weak. They can't do any more for you than you can do for yourself. But God has not forgotten you. God remembers you. I know when the Bible in certain places, it talks about how God remembered. God remembered, I think it was God remembered Noah. And God remembered certain other people at certain other times in their lives. And God remembers you. And so we're going to see how God remembers Joseph. Because he does, and he's going to work some things out, and we're just going to see how we are still the beneficiaries of God remembering Joseph. We're still benefiting even to this day from Joseph's survival in that Egyptian prison and his being able to come out and God elevating him the way he did, and Joseph being used to help the people of Israel not to starve to death. We're going to see all of that as we continue through the book of Genesis. And so hang with us on this journey. Well, that's my time. Thank you so much for stopping by Biblical Worldview. Don't forget to follow me on my socials. Leave a like under the video. Leave a comment under the video. And I will see you next time.